Faraday's Mirror, Chapter 3, Plans on Ice. Byron stared out the window of the Jeep Cherokee. He shivered. The heater wasn't exactly young. It would start warming up about the time they arrived at the Plymouth State Ice Arena, and it squeaked. His mom had the radio tuned to the local pop station. Alanis Morissette's Ironic fuzzed from the speakers. Outside, the frigid New Hampshire scenery shone in picturesque sunshine. Driving north on Route 3 near the Pemigewasset River, you have to give it to New Hampshire, he thought, where they named towns for England, mountains for U.S. presidents, and rivers for mispronunciations of Abenaki words. Frost crusted over everything. Light sparkled off the snow and icicles. Yet his mind wasn't on the music, the drive, or his upcoming practice. He thought only about the mirror. Where would it lead? How did it work? It sounded more like magic than science, but, he mused, that's how most science must seem to those who don't understand it. A computer was basically magic to him, but not to Cole. How are you coming with your reading? His mom cut in. You need me to stop by the library and check out another book on tape or lecture? She always hounded him about schoolwork. I just finished that one about the Franklin expedition, he responded, tearing his gaze away from the river and his mind away from the letter. Oh yeah? Yeah, creepy stuff. Their ships, fun fact, they were named the Terror and Chaos, he interrupted himself. Prophetic, I guess. Anyway, the ships froze into the ice, the crew got poisoned from lead in their canned food, then they got scurvy, went crazy, and even ate each other. Yuck. When was that? 1840s, Victorian era. If it was as cold up there as it is here, she took her hand from the steering wheel and blew some warmth into it. Maybe the weather drove them to it. She chuckled. What do you want to read next? He thought for a minute. Maybe Alice in Wonderland? Isn't there one called Through the Looking Glass or something? There is. She trailed off and glanced at him suspiciously. But I didn't think you liked fiction, especially not old fiction. What happened to history? I don't know, he said as they drove into town, passing a Texaco station and the fire department. Little electric wreaths and candy canes hung on the telephone poles. Christmas was only a week away. Maybe you're right. I'm kind of sold on Victorian disasters lately. I guess I'll look for something on the retreat from Kabul or the Battle of Ishlawanda. She groaned. You and your father. Alice in Wonderland, she said, then turned to him. How is a raven like a writing desk? What? It's an infamous riddle that has no answer. It comes from the book. Okay, he replied. But why ask a riddle that has no answer? Nothing in Wonderland makes sense. Not much here makes sense either, he laughed. You even watch the news? She laughed too. Looking at his mother, her laughter and the smile on her face, he thought, someone might not know that she was sick, but she had lupus. He didn't know much about it. He preferred ignorance to the anxiety of knowledge. But he knew the disease meant her body slowly tore itself apart from the inside. Her immune system attacked her organs and her skin. She took a lot of medicine, and most of it made her sick. The rest made her grumpy. She had good days, like today, and she had bad days when she didn't do much more than get out of bed. The bad days would get worse. He knew how sickness worked. Thankfully, she'd found a job where she could use her brains from home and make some money. Something to do with operating systems, modems, and troubleshooting. Those were the words she always used on the phone, anyway. His mom's full name was Felicity Asante Oakes, and her grandparents moved to the U.S. from Ghana back in the 1940s, when the British still claimed it and called it the Gold Coast. In Byron's opinion, Gold Coast sounded cooler than Ghana anyway. It brought forth images of the wealth of medieval Mali and Mansa Musa, the richest guy in the history of the world, and he was black. Secretly, Byron thought his mother the most beautiful person he'd ever met. But a teenager doesn't tell his mom that kind of thing. Her skin, where the lupus wasn't scarring it, shimmered. One night, as a joke, she, Byron, and Cole had pulled brown-colored pencils from the box to decide how best to describe themselves. She was proudly mocha, he claimed walnut, and Cole, the lightest of the three, dubbed himself caramel. Though even that label seemed a shade dark. Their father, of course, was a pasty shade of pinkish plaster, very little changed from his English ancestors. He made an ironic observation about comparing skin to food and cannibalism, then observed wryly after picking up a pencil he thought would be labeled peach and finding it to be flesh, that his skin tone could only be rightly described as raw pork fat. They passed the movie theater and turned across the bridge onto Holderness Road. Jumanji, his mom read the sign. You guys want to go? I kind of like Robin Williams. He's funny and seems like a nice, caring guy. Don't know, Byron replied as they pulled into the arena lot. What's it about? I only heard secondhand from Charlotte Taylor because they filmed it over in Keene, where her sister lives. It's set in New Hampshire. I guess a brother and a sister find some old Victorian board game that's magic, and when they play it, it sucks them in or something. She smirked. Come to think of it, it seems right up your alley. We'll go Wednesday night after your dad's grades are due. The Jeep came to a squealing stop. Packed snow crunched under the wheels. Byron just gaped at her, his mouth open. That plot line sounded oddly prophetic. All right, his mom urged. Out with you. Okay, I'm going. He grunted, opening the door and wrestling with his hockey duffel. Breath steamed from his mouth into the frigid air. I have to run by Hannaford's to get some groceries, she said, turning off the radio. I'll be back before you're done. You want anything while I'm there? He thought for a second. Get some Sour Patch Kids to sneak into the theater, and a Powerade or a Gatorade, I guess. Orange? She nodded, and he shut the door. Byron cut across the arena ice, his skates slicing the surface and sending him sliding along. There was a freedom in the speed, in the lack of resistance. Cool air blew through the wire cross-hatching of his face mask. He smiled. Even so, his mind didn't focus on the here and now. It remained at home with Cole, still on the mirror. If they finished it, he wondered, how would they test it? How would they reveal it to the world, to the government? Or maybe they'd sell it to a billionaire like Bill Gates or that old guy, Buffett? Was his name Jimmy or Warren? He could never remember. He made a cut, sending white spray flying. As for the mirror, he worried, would it endanger them? Should they build it at all? Byron recursively returned to the letter. Quote, so those having traveled through may be recalled, Wheatstone had written. That meant Englishmen had been sent to the other side 150 years ago. Why hadn't they come home? What happened to the original mirror? He had a lot of questions, and he didn't really know where to find the answers. It was Saturday, and until the first game of the season, Saturday was scrimmage day, so his practice passed in a blur. Oddly, in both video games and sports, Byron always played better when preoccupied, his body on autopilot, reacting on instinct instead of conscious thought. He played lights out, limiting the starting offense to 2 shots and no scores, but he barely registered it, and he certainly didn't notice his mom come in toward the end of practice and sit in the stands, cradling a coffee for warmth. Reflexes and hand-eye coordination were Byron's specialty. He could knock a puck out of midair and make complicated moves to and with it before his opponents could react. Sometimes, his dad joked, it felt like he could slow time and make an impossible play, but like all parents, he exaggerated his son's abilities. What got into you today? His mom asked as he hefted his duffel into the back seat. What do you mean? You scrimmaged like it was a game, like you were in a championship. Thanks, he replied, buckling his seatbelt. I guess I was just in the zone, like I am with the cello sometimes. Most days I'm trash when I'm still trying to read the piece, but sometimes I get the feel for it and it goes all right. You were better than all right. Play like that all season and you'll win your division, maybe even the state. From his mom, that was high praise. She'd been a college lacrosse and basketball player, a 4-year starter. She swore lacrosse and hockey had a lot in common, and she was certainly right. Byron had learned as much about the game, its motions, and how to defend from her as he had from his father, who'd actually played hockey in high school, and with whom he sat and watched every Bruins and Sabres game. I'm a grinder, Mom, he reminded her with a grin. Only grinders' moms and teammates notice them. He closed the door and put on his seatbelt. She started the engine. A grinder? She raised an eyebrow. Enlighten me. A grinder, the guy who works hard, plays hard, goes hard, checks hard. I'm good against a fast break and on the boards. I'm not going to score the goals. Oh, she laughed. I thought you called that guy the enforcer. Heck no, he protested. Westy's our enforcer. He's got 20 pounds and a foot on me. He can't skate, but boy can he put a hit on a guy. And none of us care if he rides the pine in the penalty box. As she pulled out of the lot, he changed the subject. Mom, do you believe in other dimensions, like parallel universes or alternate realities? Yeah, certainly. She was a Trekkie from way back, so we shouldn't have been surprised by her quick reply. Why do you ask? Just curious. He adjusted the vent. Do you think they can ever touch or, overlap, like with a wormhole or something? She smiled. Want to escape this reality, she asked. He didn't answer. Anyway, you're 14, and this is astrophysics stuff, so I don't really expect you to get it, but I love black holes. I imagine the singularity, that incredibly dense marble at the bottom of a black hole, is like a doorway between dimensions, a point at which they all merge. Her voice became dreamy. But in order to get through it, you'd have to be crushed down smaller than a period at the end of a sentence. Ouch, he grimaced. Yeah, he admitted, I don't get it. I always thought they were sort of bottomless pits sucking everything in. Well, they're that too. Listen, if I could explain black holes, she shrugged, I'd have a cool job like Carl Sagan or Bill Nye. As it is, I'm just happy I can understand them. Maybe add Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time to your reading list. It's pretty good. They probably have it on tape in the library. She reached over and rubbed his head, then changed the subject. Speaking of black holes, spaghettification, and bottomless pits, though, pasta's for dinner, she announced, gesturing to the grocery bags in the back. And garlic bread. Oh, she reached over for the cup holder. I almost forgot. She handed him an orange Gatorade. He smiled appreciatively. Thanks.